Hey, are you guys taking the ACT soon and wondering how you can totally rock the reading section? If so, in this video, I'm going to give you one of my top tips for how to really get into the ACT reading section and improve your speed, particularly when reading the passage itself. My name is Brooke, and I've scored perfectly on the ACT reading section as an adult in an official administration. I've also helped coach students to perfect scores on the reading section and overall on the exam. Now, this video we've actually excerpted from our online ACT prep course, the best ACT prep course ever, which is available at SupertutorTV.com. So if you like what you see, go check out our prep course. We also have a complete SAT prep course, and we have books for the ACT math section if you're also wanting to up your math score. As a math tutor on the ACT, I always felt like there wasn't one awesome book that did everything. And so in these books, I've packed all the information that you need to understand problems, as well as enough problems to practice each kind of question so you can totally nail every section of the ACT math section. So go check those out. They're at Amazon.com, or you can find out more at SupertutorTV.com/books. Please join us on our mailing list, SupertutorTV.com/subscribe, and we'll send you our free newsletter in which we'll give you updates when we have awesome new videos or anything cool going on at SupertutorTV, news, reminders, all that kind of good stuff. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, and let's get into this tip. Whether you feel like you struggle with time on the reading or not, it's really important that you know how to manage information in passages. And what I like to tell students is it's not that you have to necessarily think of it as a reading section, but I want you to think of it as like a passage management section, because what you need to do is manage that information in each passage that you get on the reading section. And one of the best tools that you have is the ability to change your speed as you do so. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some tips for increasing your speed, what you have to read for, what to focus on, a little bit of how to speed read. We go into that more in depth in my how to speed read video, which is also on YouTube already. So enjoy. The number one way that I usually find is effective to pick up time is to selectively skim one of the passages that you're reading. Now, when it comes to skimming the passage, you might want to do stuff out of order. That's kind of up to you. And which one you skim, for some students, they want to skim it last. For me, I like to skim it second because I know myself, I know I can finish this test in time. And so if I have to skim, I'm going to do the slowpoke passage that takes me forever first. I'm then going to skim second to speed up if I need to, or maybe third if it happens that my second passage is the one that slowed me down. And then I'm going to selectively skim. In terms of what to skim, I generally don't find that skimming the narrative fiction is that easy or doable. I generally find that one of the other three passages is easier to skim. I also find that which one is easiest to skim varies from test to test. So what I usually do is really quickly, very quickly catalog which one I think looks dopiest and easiest if I am going to go skim. And sometimes I won't even look for which one I'm going to skim until after I finish that first passage. And then I know if I'm losing time, then I will plan to skim. I like to remain flexible with a lot of these ideas because sometimes you never know, if you're on the test itself, you might find that you totally breeze through that first passage really fast and you have tons of time, and then you don't need to skim, and then you can kind of do what you want. So now let's talk about how to skim. Here are my tips for skimming. First, try to pick the easiest passage you can to skim. The easier the prose, the easier it will be to skim. Second, I have some students who will read the first sentence and the last sentence of every paragraph, and that's how they skim. That is one way to skim, but I find that it can be inflexible and I find that it can be flawed. Sometimes if I read the first and last sentence, I still don't know what's going on. And if you still don't know what's going on, you still have to read more. Remember, in your skim, you still have to get two important pieces of information. Those two pieces of information are your passage map and your main idea / tone. If you can't get those two things, then you need to slow down a little bit, or you need to improve your skimming techniques. What I like to do is I move my eyes over most of the words in a paragraph until I feel like I have the gist or the main idea of the paragraph down, and then I let up and I move on, right? If I get that main idea, then I'm cool. Once I understand the argument and the main idea of a paragraph, if I can kind of see the lay of land or what's going on, and I understand how that paragraph functions within the passage as a whole, I can move on. I usually read the intro and conclusion. Usually the introduction and conclusion are going to be very helpful in establishing your main idea and kind of understanding the organization of the passage as a whole. Sometimes the introduction is what I call a hook. It might be a little anecdote or a story or something like that. And sometimes those little anecdotes or stories are not actually that informative to the main idea of the passage. They're just making you interested or being interesting. And so if I see that that's kind of what's going on, and I see that, oh, this is just a little stupid hook story, I might skip over that hook story and try to go to the bottom of it and see, okay, what's the main point of it, or try to read the next paragraph and see what the point that that paragraph was trying to make was. So again, I remain flexible on this. I usually read the intro and conclusion, but if I get into the intro and it's a bunch of baloney, fluffy story, then I'm really going to try to figure out where's the interpretation of that story. And that brings me to my next tip, which is what I'm really on the hunt for is I want to find where the main ideas are. And sometimes those aren't in stories, those are in particular areas, and I'm going to talk about those. So the first one is questions, particularly in the natural science. If I see a question mark, that's usually something that this passage is revolving around, or that the question that everybody's trying to answer. So that's something I'm going to hone in on. If a passage outlines an academic study, usually that study will try to answer some question, and that's going to have a question mark at the end of it. That's important, okay? The second thing I'm looking for is a thesis. The thesis sometimes is in that first paragraph, but more often it might be in the second paragraph or the third paragraph, or sort of 1/3 down the first column on the first page. So I'm looking for a thesis, and sometimes that's preceded by a trigger kind of word. And I'm going to talk about trigger words in a minute. And then the other thing I'm looking for is answers or conclusions, especially in that natural science. And those usually are toward the end of the passage, maybe in the last paragraph, second to last paragraph, something like that. I'm trying to look for what is the conclusion that the author has made after talking through all these ideas, like what's the bottom line, okay? As I hunt for those central claims and ideas, well, how do I know where they are? One of the clues that I have to where those central claims and ideas are is trigger words. And I slow down when I see trigger words. And what I mean by trigger words is these are organizational cues. They can be words that are contrast signals, like however, although, even though, right? Conjunctions. They can be words that indicate additional information that's added, words like and, additionally. It can be words that denote emphasis, like key or critical or important, central. Anything that's something of a road sign that's telling me what's important or what's not important, I'm going to pay attention to those kind of little keywords. And any kind of transitional words, for example, that's going to kind of tell me how these pieces are fitting together. It's going to make it easier for me to zoom out and sort of see the framework of stuff. So I'm looking for all that transitional kind of language. I'm looking for those kind of trigger, organizational cue, little words to sort of point me to where is this moving and how is this working together, okay? The next thing that I'm looking for, and this is the point that I'm trying to get to here to talk to you guys about, is I recognize the relationship between claims and evidence, and I'm really looking for the claims above all. Remember back when I was talking about how sometimes a passage will open with a hook story, and that story is meant to prove a point. What I want to get to as the reader, if I'm trying to skim, is the point, not necessarily the story that proves the point, because I need to have that main idea. If I'm going to go to the story that proves the point, I want to have that in my passage map, but I probably have to go back to get these specific details from that story anyway if I'm trying to answer questions. So again, my goal is to really get the claims down. What is the point? What is the author's opinion? What is the take? What is the point of view? If I can grab onto that, I can kind of skip over the evidence more. So when I recognize the relationship between claims and evidence, I can skip over evidence selectively. Okay? I don't always have to read all the evidence, because if I know what the evidence is proving, I still get the author's point. And that's why I'm always trying to find traditional essays to skim, because they have this format of evidence with a claim, right? We have claim, then we have evidence. We have claim, then we have evidence. And because of that structure, there's essentially a type of redundancy going on. It's not necessarily redundancy, so to speak. It's actually just development. But because that's the way the ideas are developed, if I can shortcut and not read all of the development, but get the point, I can save a lot of time and still be in pretty good shape in terms of knowing what the author thinks. Cool? Another thing in the same vein is that I recognize lists, but I skip over them. And this is just like a little way to just sort of jumpstart and catch up a little time. Say you have a story about a woman who's reminiscing about her mother's cooking as a child. She might list off 5 of the dishes that her mom used to cook, of Vietnamese dishes, right? And you're going to see a bunch of words in Vietnamese. I see that and I go, Vietnamese food. And I skip the whole thing because I know what it is. So if you can know what something is as a chunk, and you know what it is, you can recognize it. You don't have to read through everything. The other thing that I try to do is I try to not subvocalize, and that might be a catchword that you guys don't totally understand if you haven't watched our speed reading video. but I try not to subvocalize anything that's like foreign sounding or difficult to pronounce. When I see people's names, I might just look at the first letter if it's really confusing to read. I don't want to waste that time like reading through those whole names and things like that, which brings me to speed reading tips. Now, my best advice if you want to learn how to read faster overall, or you want to learn some speed reading techniques, is check out our speed reading video. And I'll just review those techniques really quickly. I read in chunks, meaning I read several words at a time with my eyes. I avoid reading small words like the and. I don't read every single word. If I get the gist of a paragraph, I'm done, I move on. And I always read with a purpose. For me, my goal is to get in and get the main idea of each paragraph and the main idea of the passage as a whole, and to kind of get what's going on. If I get that, I'm good, and I get out of there, right? I'll circle or underline quickly as I go to try to emphasize to myself those purposes, but I don't spend a ton of time reading. And again, there's also an idea of subvocalization and minimizing subvocalization that you can see in the speed reading. That one's the hardest to do, and it also takes a lot of time to learn, but it can still be valuable. If you want to go check it out, go check out that video. So when it comes to how to skim, those are my tips for how to skim. Again, follow this up, if you would, with that speed reading video. That'll get more in depth on how to read faster. And it's a general video. It'll help you in life too. But there you go. That's how I kind of negotiate the passage to get through it as fast as possible. I hope you guys like this video, so please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, because what are you doing if you haven't subscribed? I hope to see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Watch more videos, and I'll see you soon.